Okay, let's kick things off. You've probably seen it everywhere, right? The headlines, the buzz, these new weight loss medications like Semaglutide, they're definitely having a moment.
Oh, absolutely. Hard to miss.
But, what we want to unpack today is maybe a bit different. It's less about the drug itself and more about, well, the person taking it.
Exactly. We're looking at some really interesting sources today that frame this whole thing in a very human-centered way. Think Dan Hollis protocol, that kind of approach.
Right. So the idea is these meds might handle the biology, but what about the rest? The habits, the mindset, the story you tell yourself.
The sources suggest the medication isn't really the endpoint. It's more like it creates an opening, a space.
A space, yeah. And our mission in this deep dive is to explore what the sources say you do with that space, how you use this kind of pause from the biological noise to work on bigger things.
Behavior, identity, support systems, all that stuff.
Yeah, it's using a medical tool to fuel a really deeply human change process. That's the angle we're taking from these sources.
And it's quite a shift, isn't it? Moving beyond just, okay, the drug suppresses appetite to looking at the psychology. It's not just about gritting your teeth and using willpower. These sources argue there's more structure needed.
Okay, so where do they suggest starting? It seems to begin with this concept of silence.
Yeah, start with silence. There's a quote from Dan Hollis mentioned, something like, when the cravings stop, the truth begins, which is pretty powerful.
Mm. So the idea is that the constant, I guess, mental energy spent on food, cravings, maybe emotional eating, that's like background noise.
The persistent noise, yeah, for a lot of people. And the medication apparently just turns the volume way down.
And that quiet, according to these sources, can be, well, revealing, maybe even uncomfortable.
It can be, because suddenly the things you might have been using food to cope with or distract yourself from, they're still there.
Ah, okay, so the insight isn't just enjoy the peace, it's listen to what's in the quiet.
Exactly. Use that pause. Not to immediately jump into some super strict diet, but just to notice. What was that noise actually covering up?
What role was food really playing, beyond just fuel?
Was it comfort, stress relief, boredom? The medication might handle the physical urge, but those learned connections, they stick around.
Right, and that noticing, that awareness,
Yeah.
that seems to lead directly into the next piece they talk about. Rewire the rituals.
Yes, this is crucial. They put it quite starkly, actually. Every pound lost is a habit that needs replacing, not just removing.
That hits home.
Yeah.
Because the physical hunger might be less, but the automatic reach for a snack at 3 p.m. or eating while watching TV, those are rituals, right?
Deeply ingrained ones. They don't just vanish because the biological signal changes. The habit loop is still there.
So the sources are saying, use that space where you're not constantly fighting cravings to consciously build new routines.
Actively build them. Find other ways to meet those needs that the old food rituals were meeting. A walk, calling a friend, journaling, whatever works for you.
The medication makes it possible to see the old habits and build new ones, but you still have to do the building work.
Which connects really well to the third big idea. Anchor identity before the weight drops.
Okay, explain that one. There's another quote there, right?
Yeah, your body changes faster than your identity. That's the trap.
Ooh. That feels, yeah, very true. You see the number on the scale go down, your clothes fit differently, but inside, you might still feel like the same person.
Exactly. Your self-perception, your internal image, it often lags behind the physical reality. And the sources argue that's dangerous.
How so? Dangerous in what way?
Well, if you still fundamentally see yourself as someone who struggles, someone who isn't healthy, your subconscious can kind of pull you back, sabotage the progress almost.
Because your internal story hasn't caught up with the external changes.
Wow. So the work isn't just physical, it's about consciously building an identity that aligns with the changes you're making.
Which involves building a life where food isn't the main focus, where you have other sources of connection, purpose.
Right. And doing that takes time, which leads to the idea of pace the process.
But wait, aren't these drugs known for causing rapid weight loss sometimes? How does pacing fit in?
Good question. The sources clarify they aren't necessarily talking about slowing the physical loss, but about emotional and metabolic pacing, meaning you need to give your mind, your habits, your identity time to integrate the changes. If it all happens too fast without that internal work.
It's maybe less stable, less likely to stick.
That seems to be the argument. You need to build the internal structures to support the external shift.
Okay, and speaking of support, this next one sounds a bit counterintuitive at first. Plan the off-ramp from day one.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? But the logic is powerful. The sources say the real work begins after the medication.
So you don't wait until you're thinking about stopping the drug to figure out how you'll manage without it.
No, you start thinking about it, planning for it right from the beginning, building the skills and supports you'll need long term.
Why? What's the risk if you don't?
The sources argue relapse often isn't just about hunger coming back full force. It's about those old patterns, the unaddressed rituals, the old identity narrative. They resurface when the medication's effect lessens or stops.
So it's not that the drug failed you, it's that the underlying behavioral scaffolding wasn't built strongly enough while you had the drug support.
Precisely. Which brings us neatly to the need to actually build the scaffolding.
Scaffolding, I like that term. What does that look like in practice, according to the sources?
They call it neurobiological scaffolding, which sounds intense, but it really means having robust support systems.
Not just nice to haves, but essential structures.
Yeah. Emotional support, community, maybe coaching, having a clear daily structure, even just having the language to talk about what you're going through. Connection is key.
Information helps, but that human connection, that shared experience, that provides the real structure.
Absolutely. And all of this, the silence, the rituals, identity, pacing, planning, scaffolding, it all seems to culminate in the final, most personal layer. Rewrite the narrative.
Okay. Weight loss is biology. Staying there is narrative. That's the core idea here.
That's the quote. Yeah, it really gets to the heart of the human-centered approach.
It's about the stories we tell ourselves,
Mm.
about past attempts, about our relationship with food, maybe even our self-worth.
Those deep-seated beliefs. I always regain the weight. I'm just not disciplined. I don't deserve to feel good. Things like that.
And no drug can fix that story.
Right. The sources suggest the process involves actively challenging those limiting narratives and writing new ones that align with who you're becoming.
So it's not just about discipline holding you to a weight number.
It's about your internal story matching your actions and the life you want. It's maybe less about becoming a totally different person and more about finally becoming yourself, perhaps, without the noise.
That's a really powerful reframe. So putting it all together, these sources, this Dan Hollis framework, it's saying these medications are valuable because they create this quiet space, this pause.
Yes, they turn down the biological volume.
But that pause is just the beginning. The real work, the lasting change, comes from using that quiet time to, listen, rebuild habits, solidify a healthy identity, get support, and change your internal story.
It pivots the focus away from just the medicine or the scale and onto meaning, structure, and self-alignment.
The medication gives you the stillness, the capacity, but you have to actively design the path forward within that stillness.
That sums it up well.
Which leaves us, and you listening, with maybe this thought to chew on. The sources really stress planning for life after the medication, right from the start, because the relapse danger isn't just returning hunger, it's those unaddressed patterns and narratives resurfacing. So think about any big change you're working on in your life, health, career, anything. How much are you planning for the after, for when the initial motivation fades or the external support changes?
What internal strengths, what external scaffolding are you building now to make sure that change lasts?
Something to definitely think about.
Indeed.
Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive.